This is HERkys Voice, a conversation with special Hawkeye guests focusing on the stories and people behind Hawkeye athletics. Now, here's the host of HERkys Voice, Iowa women's tennis coach, Sasha Schmid.
Welcome to HERkys Voice. This week, I had the chance to sit down with our head men's basketball coach, Fran McCaffery, for a great conversation about his family, his wife, Margaret, coaching as he starts his 40th season as a collegiate basketball coach. And really what I wanted to do is just learn more about Fran, learn things that I didn't know before. And I loved this conversation. We also had a chance to talk some Iowa basketball. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Fran McCaffery. Welcome to HERkys Voice. So excited today to be finally sitting down with my colleague, Fran McCaffery on HERkys Voice. I don't know how it took us season 3 to get you
got my
here.
wife on there before me.
Okay, so she, I think, currently has the most listens.
Well, and she should.
So this is going to be really interesting when I put yours out there.
Base.
Yeah, that's right. She let us off. It was one of the first episodes. We had Margaret on, and I loved that conversation with her.
Yeah, she's been in this business for a long time. You know, she was a coach, as you know, and you covered that. And then as a coach's wife, as the mom of players that play, I mean, it's been quite the journey for her, which I think was, which is what made the conversation interesting, because there were so many different perspectives that she was coming from. And I thought she did a good job of, kind of getting her to kind of go into detail with all of it. Really,
and her ties back to her own experience playing collegiate basketball and her mentors, and how that set the stage for so much of her life and her experience with athletics, which is really what obviously we're trying to always do in HERkys Voice, is just, be able to talk about really the empowering experience of athletics, especially for women.
Yeah, she was really a good player. She was an All-American, and she graduated in 1992. When she was in high school, she loved to play. She started playing at a young age, and I think she admitted, on the pod, that she didn't even know that women were going to get scholarships at the collegiate level. Next thing you know, she's visiting UCLA, Duke, and Notre Dame, and obviously chose Notre Dame, and then it was kind of moving on with her life, and was thinking about law school, but down the road, and wanted to travel a little bit, and she played overseas, and then she taught and coached in Chicago at a high school, and was getting ready to go to law school, and Muffet reached out to her and said, "Hey, would you like to come and be an assistant?" And that's, of course, when we started dating. And I often thought that had she chosen that as her profession, she would have been really good at it. I think she would have been really good. But she was at least able to do it for a little while and enjoy it. And then, it's a little more stressful, I think, when you don't have control and you're watching your sons play and your husband coach, things like that.
I think she would have been a fantastic coach because she's so intelligent and understands the game. But, the one thing about Margaret is she's just got such a big heart and would really be a player's coach and be so much behind her players as people. You just know that's how she would be.
Well, and quite honestly, she's like that with our program. She has really been an integral part of the recruiting process every place that I've worked. And people often don't realize the stress that parents are under when they go through the recruiting process and their child makes a decision, and then they've taken visits, but then all of a sudden there comes that point in time where you bring your child to campus and you drop them off and you go home. And who are you leaving them with? Who's looking out for them? So obviously it's the coach, but there's the assistant coaches, and in our case, it's always been Margaret. Moms felt comfortable that she was going to look out for our players. I mean, over the years, she has consistently, our players get sick, she brings them soup, she bakes them chocolate chip cookies, and she really looks out for them, as does our trainer and our team physicians and the coaches. But just, I think parents knowing that there's someone else that really pays attention is something that has really helped me in my profession.
What's it been like to have, somebody that really understands basketball? It is truly a team effort with you guys as a couple, and you're able to have somebody that obviously you can speak with after great moments and tough moments, and you can really share in this entire coaching experience since you guys have been together.
Yeah, I think she has great perspective, and our conversations sometimes are more sophisticated technically than maybe some others. I think most of my friends, their wives are incredibly supportive, but they didn't play, so they're just supporting, and this is different. She understands post play, she understands the motion offense, she understands and recognizes those who might be struggling and why. Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's lack of understanding or lack of experience, and she has been known to kind of have a comforting thing to say at times to some of our guys. And then she also knows when not to say something,
which can be just as important.
Absolutely. And it's sometimes difficult, especially because she has a good relationship with all of our parents, but sometimes there's times when parents aren't exactly pleased after a game. Their son didn't play well, or he didn't play as much, and so it's knowing how to respond and how to talk to people. And for me, I know I wouldn't have had the success that I've had or been able to do it for as long without her support.
Yeah. And raising 4 kids together, and all of them have had their own paths and journeys that they're still on to reach their potential, and the way that you guys have been able to help Connor, Patrick, Jack with their basketball, and Marit with all of her activities, whether it might be on the golf course or with her studies. What perspective has being a dad brought to you as a coach, especially coaching 2 of your sons?
It's been awesome in a lot of ways. It started with Connor, when I was coaching 20 plus years ago, and he would want to come to practice every day, and that was fun having him there. So it was sort of inevitable that he was going to play at some level, how good he was going to be. And he was a guy that wanted to play more than one sport. Patrick kind of wasn't interested in sports, and then when it was basketball only. He played a little bit of Little League, but really not very much. And same with Jack. I appreciated Marit because she played volleyball, she played softball, she played golf. She really liked to play. It wasn't something that she was going to look at long term. Like, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to play a sport. No, I'm playing sports because I like to play. I like my friends. It's fun. And when I go to college, I'm going to be a student, and that's my goal. She wants to go to law school, and she's always been really, really smart and very disciplined in the classroom, I think. And it's fun, with Jack now being the youngest guy, because it's sort of a continuation. All those years of, you play during the season for your school, or maybe it's at the Y or something like that. Then all of a sudden you get into AAU, which now means your spring and your summer and your fall are full. So we kind of went through that for 8 or 9 years, 10 years with Connor and Patrick, and then here comes Jack. And this summer he was in Indianapolis, he was in South Carolina, he was in L.A., which is really cool because he's only a freshman in high school, going to be a sophomore. But what you do now in the AAU circuit is you go around and you try to play against the best players in the country, not just the best players locally or in the state, because that's how you get challenged, that's how you get better. He wants to play here or at this level like his brothers, and he seems to be on that path, and, we encourage him. So, it's been a long time, if you think about it, when we started with Connor playing AAU or playing CYO or at the Y, he was probably 4, 5 when he started playing, and that was 20 years ago. So we're still going at it. So I enjoy it. I think sometimes it's hard for Margaret because when you have a family, the season is so intense. She wants to plan a family vacation, or she wants to. We have a place up in northern Minnesota on Lake Vermilion, wants to go up there with the family. And, well, Jack's got games, or Jack's leaving for L.A. We got to go. And so luckily Mart has enjoyed, a lot of times you see sisters get dragged around and like you can tell they're kind of miserable, but she's really enjoyed it because she's traveled around the country. Patrick really, in particular, when he was playing, they were in L.A., they were in Vegas, they were in New York, one summer, Chicago, Indy, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Rock Hill, South Carolina. I mean, all these different places. So she's really enjoyed going to those places and seeing it, and she loves her brothers and follows them closely. And it's one of the reasons why she transferred back. She went to Villanova as a freshman. She transferred back to Iowa because she said, "Hey, we're only going to have a few more years together, and I want to be around. I want to watch my brothers play. I want to be around my family." Because then all of a sudden she goes off to law school and goes off to work, and the boys do the same. And I really appreciated that about her.
That is really exciting to have her back, and I, can think of your family. At the West High games, the West High basketball games. For those listeners that don't get the chance to go to West High, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's an amazing team and a lot of great players, but there's always this great section where the McCaffery family's hanging out. And I get so excited when Jack makes a good play watching his brothers.
Yeah, they go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, they do.
And they're really good with him too, Sasha. They know when to be tough on him, like, hey, you need to be tougher, or when they need to back off a little bit, put their arms around him and mentor him. But it means so much to him when he comes out on the floor and his older brothers are there and his sister's there and his parents are there, and Margaret's parents come whenever they're in town. They come down, and whenever they come, they want to see us play and they want to see him play. And my brother's in town, he goes. So having that support is tremendous, and it's just kind of cool that he's following in the footsteps of Connor and Patrick, playing for Steve Bergman, who they played for, a legendary high school coach in this state. And it's just been a great place for all of our children. They all went to West.
And I know many people like me. There's certain pictures in your mind that you really remember, and for so many of us, we were so touched when you guys won the Big Ten championships, and just to see you find Connor and you find Patrick for the celebration. I mean, that's just well,
I remember the first time we took Connor on the road. He just wanted to go with the team, and he was really little. But we took him. We played VMI, Virginia Military Institute, in Lexington, Virginia. So he went on a bus, and he stayed at a hotel, and he went to the shoot-around, he went to the meal, he sat on the bench. And then, little by little, I would take both of them, and they just thought it was the coolest thing. And then, when we got here, I remember I took him on the road. He was in 6th grade. We went to Indiana. And okay, this is a little different. The arenas are bigger, the crowds are crazy, and I told him, I said, okay, now when the introductions start, there's going to be loud music, and it's going to be try to intimidate us, and just take it all in and look at our guys and watch how they process it and watch how they prepare. And we ended up winning that game. We got a bucket and a stop in the last 15 seconds, and he went crazy on the bench. I said, because we're going to snap our fingers and you're going to be playing on this court. And I remember we went down there and beat them, and he had a really played an integral part in that game. Bohannon had a great game. Tyler Cook had a great game. But Connor was really good in a variety of ways, like he always is, helping us win. So then to win the championship, the journey was so incredible, and to watch those two hug, and then we hugged, and then I hugged Margaret and Marit, and Patrick came over. Patrick came over and hugged Margaret and Marit before I did, and they were both crying.
Yeah.
And he was hugging everybody. He was just fired up, and so it was really emotional, and to watch them both enjoy that experience together was so special. I had friends, sending me pictures of us hugging, and that they had seen, and how cool that was. But it was an incredible experience. It was an incredible 4 days. It's not easy winning those games the way we did. You have to win 4 games, and then we had to beat Indiana and Purdue in Indianapolis, the last 2. Hawk fans were great. We had a ton. But, you're in Indianapolis. It was an Indiana and Purdue home game in some respects. But the Hawk fans showed up in force and really supported our team.
Well, it's hard to win any championship, It's just hard. It's hard to win. A lot of things you got to work out, and you got to play well, and, so that alone. But then to not have 1 but 2 of your boys on the team, and have them do it together and have everybody there, that was just a really cool goosebump moment. And I think because you're the person you are, and Margaret is who she, you let us in to your family and your life and your humanity. And that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, we're all people, and everybody out there can relate to a father-son relationship, and just wanting to be in those moments and to have that moment with your dad together.
Well, no question. And as you well know, every moment is not like that.
Yeah.
Which makes those moments special. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you don't play well. The players make mistakes, the coach makes mistakes. We struggle coming down the stretch. We get off to a bad start. I think it's the journey that is what makes it special. So the culmination of a journey to cut the nets down together, there's just no better feeling, because we know how hard they worked. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of travel, a lot of time in the gym. I can vividly recall, I'm going to say this was 6-7 years ago. It was Christmas Day. And as most people who are basketball fans know, Christmas Day is a big day for NBA basketball. The NBA dominates Christmas Day. And so there's one game after another. And it's typically the superstars. And so we get up, we open the presents, and then Margaret made an unbelievable meal, and we eat, and we get ready to watch the NBA. And Patrick comes downstairs. He's got a bag around his shoulders. Let's go. So we drove over to Carver and worked out in the practice gym. Connor and Patrick, put them through some stuff on Christmas Day. So you remember that. Now to them, it's not work. This is my sanctuary. Okay, this is a day I got to get some work done here. And then they've been able to instill that mindset to Jack. And so he's over here all the time, working out every chance he gets. And we're very fortunate, let's be honest, that we have access to a facility like this, and they can actually get in there and get shots up and work on their game.
So I want to hear a little bit about when you grew up, and tell me a little bit about your parents, and how did you get started in basketball, and who were your mentors to you early on?
Well, it was a different time. Neither of my parents went to college. Nobody could afford it in those days. they were both smart enough, and it wasn't even really in your thought process, because who had the money? So you went to work. And my dad was a Philadelphia police officer. He was in the Army, fought in Korea. And my mom, I always felt like she would really have loved to go to college. And even in those days, a lot of women didn't go to college. And if anybody did, it was the men. It was kind of the way it was. That's the way it should be, but it's the way it was. So it was very important to both of them that my brother and I have that experience. So they sent us to private school, made sacrifices, sent us to private school, in elementary school and high school. And I attended the University of Pennsylvania, and my brother attended Villanova, and really shaped our lives in so many ways. And my dad was very sports oriented, so got us playing early. And in those days, it was Little League and the local boys club. Luckily, we went to a school that had a sports program that was, because not everyone did, especially in elementary school, especially in the early grades, maybe in the 7th or 8th grade. But we had I went to a private Catholic school with a group of nuns that started it, and the one was Mother Superior. Her brother was an NBA player and an All-American. So
wow.
She recognized, she built a gym. When nobody was building gyms, she got the money and built a gym and started a program, and that was really a game changer for us. So we played for the school team, and we played independently, and as a result of that, I was recognized by a gentleman by the name of Sam Rhines, who was coaching the other team, and he came up to me after the game. I was like in 4th grade, 3rd grade. He said, "You're really good. You should come play with us in these tournaments." So in those days, things weren't as organized. Mm-hmm. So we're going to play in this tournament. It's all over the city. We'll, wait on the corner. We'll come get you. And he'd come by, and there's 7 kids in the car. I'd be 8, and we'd pile in, and we'd head down to North Philadelphia and play these tournaments. And he kind of just took my career from there and said, "Okay, now you're going to play in the Sunny Hill League, which is the top league in Philadelphia, in the city." I grew up in the city, didn't grow up in the suburbs, so I kind of grew up playing a city game. And then Sam Rhines was a black gentleman who would bring me down to the Sunny Hill League, which was, like I said, the top league, but it was predominantly black. All the best players were in the Sunny Hill League. That's where they were. So he said, "If you're going to be any good, you got to do it against these guys." I'm just telling you, that's what you're going to have to do. And it's okay, let's go. And it was really an important part of how I was raised and how basketball kind of became, the focal point, other than academics, because my mom stayed on top of me, so did my dad. But he handled a little more of the athletic side. But they came to every game we ever played, my brother and I. And I can remember, "Okay, Mom, I have to go out to West Philly. I'm participating in a workout. When we're at Haddington Playground, 57th and Haddington, and go in she parks in the car outside. I go inside, and I'm the only white player in the building. But like I said, that's where the good players were. So, and that's where you had to have a different level of toughness, and that's how you developed it. And come out, the game's over, get in the car and drive home. She sat there for 2 hours in the car while I was hooping in the rec center in West Philly. So that's kind of how I grew up, and then I went through the recruiting process, and which was interesting. Signed with Wake Forest out of high school, wanted to play in the ACC, and after a year, I felt it was more important that I transfer back to Philadelphia, where I was from, attend an Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania, get an Ivy League degree, but also play top-level basketball, which I did. And then, your career kind of comes to a screeching halt, which we all know, when you can't play in the NBA, I'm not good enough. So do I want to give up the game and go to work, or do I want to kind of stay in the game? So I stayed in the game, and you work your way up the ladder. Never made any money for the longest time, but we didn't care about that. If we made any, we were thrilled. We got the coach, and I've been very fortunate, with the places that I've worked and the people that I've worked for. I always had great athletic directors, and anybody that thinks they can do it without that, they are sadly mistaken. If you don't have an athletic director that's on the same page with you, you can't win at this level. You can't win at the collegiate level at all. And I've coached at the mid-major and the low-major level, even harder there, because you don't have any money.
Yeah.
You have no budget. You got to hustle, and you need help from the administration. It's the same here now with, the arms race that we're dealing with, which Gary Barta has to deal with, and I have to deal with. All the coaches have to deal with, and then you factor in NIL on top of it. It's a new world, but you need support from your administration. And I've been very lucky. Gary Barta. I had John Dargenio at Siena, Nelson Bob at Greensboro, John Whitehead, and Dick Gibney at Lehigh. Just really, really lucky to have those kind of mentors. And then when I worked at Notre Dame, I had two great mentors in John McLeod and Digger Phelps.
Yeah.
And they were dramatically different in their approaches, but I learned a great deal, how to coach, but I think more importantly, how to run a program. It's two different things.
Your brother is am I right that he ended up staying in sports, but as a sports writer?
He's a sports writer, correct. And he and I are very close. Really, we're very close growing up, phenomenally supportive. He's 2.5 years older than me. And we went everywhere together. It was really hard when I went away to school the first time. We weren't together. But of course, we talked all the time and still talk all the time. And it's great that he's in the sports world. It's also been very helpful to me because you're mentored in a lot of different ways, and that's one, dealing with the media. And I've never been afraid of the media because, if he became a full-time sports writer when I was a freshman in college, essentially. His senior year in college, he was a full-time sports writer. So he did both, which is really hard to do. So I knew all the writers in Philadelphia, and just kind of have a different perspective. So sometimes when you're dealing with a difficult situation as it relates to the media and how you feel it might be covered, I'll have a conversation with him. He's been invaluable in so many different ways, not just as a supporting, loving brother, but as somebody who is in that industry and has been, he's 65 now and he's still going strong. He covers the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers, the Eagles, Big Five basketball, high school sports in Philadelphia. I mean, and the newspaper staffs are much smaller than they used to be. So he might cover the Eagles one day and be talking to Jalen Hurts, the Eagles quarterback, and the next day, some young lady from a high school who's a field hockey player is in the state tournament. Mm-hmm. And I always appreciated that he gave equal attention to both. If I'm here covering this, then I'm going to talk to the players, I'm going to talk to the coach, I'm going to present this the right way. I think he's always been fair. And sometimes in the pros you're dealing with tremendous ego, and that's something you gotta recognize, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable. But as long as you're fair with how you portray a team or a person, I think he's, I'm not saying he's never gone negative on somebody, but mm-hmm. It's not without a lot of thought, and what he thought was well deserved. And we deal with that all the time. Not every word that's written about us is positive. You
really have, you just can't ever take the Philly out of you. And no. I know you're a huge fan, Phillies fan.
Yeah.
Eagles, 76. Yeah. And we've got some great Philly ties here to our athletic department.
We do. Lisa's one of the first people I met. When I got here, she came right up to me, and we talk all the time. Unbelievable coach, unbelievable job she does, and always pulling for her and her team. And then our good friend Jeff Garbett, but he's really from Jersey.
That's right.
He's not really from Philly, but he sounds like he's from Philly.
He does.
He sounds like he's from Philly. But see, the interesting thing about that, we laugh about this all the time, he and I, everybody in Philadelphia in the summer goes to the Jersey Shore. And that's kind of where he's from. So down at the shore, it's all Philly and Jersey people. We're all together. I don't care where you're from, that's where you end up. And there's a bunch of different beach towns that we go to. And, we talk about all the spots that, the restaurants, and it's a great foodie area. Some people go down and they want to hit the bars and stuff like that, but the boardwalk and the food, and it's really good for families. And we've taken our family there a number of years. My mom, before she passed, she used to rent a house, and we would take the kids up there. And we haven't been in a couple years, but we go about every 4 years. We rent a place there and take the kids because they really enjoy it, and they see their family from back there. My brother, like I said, he's there with his wife, but then I have a bunch of cousins too.
So can you ever imagine that from that, upbringing and playing in the city, that you'd find your way to Iowa City, Iowa? And
no, and I think that's a great question, because I think most people that live and grow up in Philadelphia expect to be there, raise their family there, their parents are there, their kids are there, whatever, their grandparents, aunts and uncles. I mean, that's the way most of the people are, and I have a lot of Philly people say, how did you move out there? They've never been here, so they don't know what it's like. But as you know, as a coach, you go where the coaching profession takes you. I mean, if you choose to be a coach, you're probably not going to be at the same place for 35, 40 years. So once I made that decision, I knew, all right, time to move. My mother had a saying, convenience and opportunity rarely meet.
That's good.
So I remember I had an opportunity to go to Notre Dame. I was a head coach at Lehigh. I had to then become an assistant. I had to move to Indiana. It was a bold move at that time in my career, but I wanted to learn from Digger Phelps. I wanted to be at Notre Dame. I wanted to learn what the highest level was. I hadn't been at the highest level. I was as a player, but not as a coach. And so, I'm coaching at Lehigh, and we had great coaches and teams, but I'm, preparing scouting reports to play Lafayette and Drexel. And next year I'm preparing scouting reports against Bobby Knight and Mike Krzyzewski, Indiana and Duke. Well, that's how you learn. That's how you get better. So I was very fortunate that Digger gave me that chance. Coach McLeod retained me when Digger retired. He came from the NBA. He had a completely different perspective. Learned so much from him. And again, you're playing those teams. Duke, North Carolina, Indiana, Kentucky. I mean, that's who we used to play. And then we played a lot of Big East teams, Boston College, Providence. And we played Big 12 teams, Missouri. We would always play. We'd play DePaul, Marquette, Dayton. And it was just a great way to grow as a coach and prepare to hopefully one day be at this level. Because, otherwise it's a big jump. You have to be able to go through it. So I did. And then, so you decided to get into coaching, and I moved to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Then we moved to South Bend, Indiana. Then I moved to Greensboro, North Carolina. Then I moved to Albany, New York. And then ultimately Iowa City, Iowa. That was an easy one because it's the Big Ten, and I'd been lucky enough to coach in Carver 2 different occasions. Played in the tournament out here and saw the facility and saw the fan base and had a chance to experience Iowa City. Because quite honestly, most people in Philadelphia have a very narrow and uneducated perspective on what it's like to live here. they think it's all nothing but cornfields, the entire state. And we have a lot of cornfields, but we have a lot of other things that are interesting and great families. I think about how my children grew up in elementary school and in West High, which we mentioned before. And my brother even comments when he comes out, he said, wow, what a great place for these kids to grow up the way they did. And then we can go visit. We go to Philly and visit, and we go to various places and visit. So I think they've had the best of it all in that sense.
Within our athletic department, I think sometimes it's interesting for people to kind of get a glimpse when you can kind of pull the curtains back. And I think one of the things that I enjoy about being a coach here is the great head coaches that I work with and the camaraderie in the athletic department with our coaching staffs. I think you've been at other schools and everyone can kind of be so consumed with their duties and stay in silos, but this is a really great atmosphere. You mentioned Lisa Salucci and Jeff Garbett with your ties. We started, recording, and my phone, Tom Brands was calling, checking in. And, I think there's things about Iowa that make it unique, and it always goes back to those relationships and people. And it's you and I sitting down today, getting to learn about your family and your background. This is really what makes work here that much more meaningful.
Well, if you think about it, when we both got into this business, we'd hoped that that's the way it would be. And you're right, because sometimes the business side of it takes over, and we get tunnel vision. And, we don't even know who the coaches are and how their teams are doing. We're just locked in, trying to win the next game. And then at the end of the year, you take a breath and start over, try to sign some people. But I do think our administration has done a good job with that, bringing us together. And, at the end of the day, if you're a good person, you do care about your colleagues and you're there to help in any way that you can. So I appreciate that. It's always been that way everywhere I've coached, which I, again, go back to the ADs that I worked for, but also the coaches that some of them I'm still really good friends with at places I haven't worked at in a long time. Still talk to my AD at Siena and my AD at Greensboro regularly. The AD at Siena is still there. The other one has retired, but he's been out here to watch our teams. And I think this profession is essentially about relationships and how they grow and how they develop. And we're always there to give any insight and help in any way that we can, because the shape of the ball might be different, but we're still coaching, we're still mentoring young people, and I think we have an impressive group of coaches who are really good at what they do, but more importantly, really care about the student athletes. Yeah,
I agree. So I'd be remiss, and I'm sure I would get a lot of pushback if I didn't ask you about the outlook. So I definitely wanted to sit down with you and learn things that I didn't know. So I've loved hearing all of this and just getting more insight into your family and background. So thank you for all of that.
Absolutely.
Looking ahead, what does the year look like? What are you excited about? And give us HERkys Voice listeners a little, preview.
Well, last year was really interesting because it was the first time in my career, and I've said this many times, where every player on the team was in a different role than the year before. All right, so now we have some starters back on this team, but, Tony didn't start the season in the starting lineup. Obviously, he became one, was terrific, and he'll be a starter again. Connor was a starter, and then he came off the bench, and that's great, but not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's willing to do that. So he was willing to do it and help any way he could. Patrick really blossomed. I thought Philip Rabracha, getting him out of the transfer portal was huge for us last year. What a terrific player, terrific person. I think we really saw Chris Murray develop in an impressive way. And I think the spring where he worked out with his brother down in Chicago in preparation for his NBA tryouts, that was a great experience for him. He's coming back with, I think, a different level of maturity and a different level of confidence. I'm excited to watch him not play with his brother for the first time.
Yeah.
One of the things he always says is he liked the fact that we recruited them as individuals, because it's easy to, we'll just recruit the twins, and they're different personalities. They have different games. One's right-handed, one's left-handed. They're just different people. So I'm really interested to see Chris blossom. Our point guard position, I think, with Aaron Eulis and DeSante Bowen, Aaron is really coming into his own. He had an injury towards the end of last year that limited his success. It didn't limit his availability because he's a really tough kid, but he wasn't as efficient because his wrist was really bothering him. Of course, it was his right wrist, so makes it harder to shoot, harder to finish. But he kept battling for us, and now he feels really good, so I'm excited for him. DeSante is an incoming freshman, really talented guard out of Boston. Peyton Sanford, one of the best players in our league, one of the best shooters I've ever coached. Tough kid, was grown. He's over 6'7", probably close to 6'8". He plays 4 positions. Made huge plays for us last year in the championship game and pretty much all season long. Excited for him. And then Josh Dix, kid from Council Bluffs. I mean, he's just really good. He had a terrible injury at the end of his senior year, so we were a little cautious with how we utilized him this summer. We kept it really light, and he started practicing this fall. Looks really good, terrific player, versatile, about 6'5". And then we have the 2 big fellas, Joshua Gundley and Riley Mulvey. Josh was tremendous in the Purdue game, and I was thrilled for him. He felt really good about himself and how he's developing. Same thing with Riley. We classed him up, so he should have been a high school senior. He was on the team last year, but he got to go every day in practice against really good players. So, I like our team. I think those 2 can be effective. The other 9 guys that I mentioned are all really talented, kind of interchangeable parts. You look at Peyton and Patrick and Connor and Josh, and even Aaron, Tony, and DeSante. They're not strictly point guards, strictly 2 guards. Tony's a great rebounder. You can play 3 guards and 3 smaller guards, and he'll get in there and rebound. Peyton's a tremendous rebounder. You can play him at the 4 spot. And Connor can play the point if we need him to. We have plenty of people who can play that position. So we have the most difficult schedule that we've ever put together. And we did that by design. We thought this team could handle it. They're excited about it. We have 2 challenge games, the ACC and the Big East. We have Iowa State. We have a MTE in Florida with Clemson, California, and TCU. 20 league games. And then the Jimmy V Classic in Madison Square Garden where we play Duke. So without a doubt, the toughest schedule. But, essentially, if you can remain competitive, it helps your RPI and it helps your standing with the NCAA Selection Committee.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you have any of those circled or, want to draw attention to any of those games. But really, I mean, how can you even distinguish? There's so many.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think you're right, Sasha. I think our fans get excited about us going to the Garden, playing in the Madison Square Garden. Obviously, Iowa State is always something that gets everybody excited about. The challenge games have become something that, what we really wanted was to create interest in college basketball in November, because sometimes it really didn't happen until January 1st because it kind of let college football finish. We said, look, our season starts in early November. We got to get the people fired up. We got to get on TV, and we got to create some interest. And those scheduling situations did that, as did the Jimmy V, as has the MTEs. For years it was, there's one in Maui and there's one in Alaska. Now they're in the Bahamas, they're in Florida, they're in the Cayman Islands, you name it. You go to Vegas, obviously destination locations, most of them. We played in the Garden in an MTE a couple years ago. We beat UConn in the championship. So it's something that we're preparing for now. We had the guys in here for 9 weeks in the summer, and we started working out again 1 week after they arrived back on campus. So we've been going over a little over a week and getting them ready.
so exciting. Always, feels like you're ready to go. I mean, it's always a new optimism of the start of a year. And what year of coaching will this be for you? What are you starting?
Let's see. I think it's 40. Yeah, I think it's 40. It's either 40 or 41. But no, I think it's 40.
40.
Yeah,
you're starting
year.
your 40th year coaching.
40th year. As my first year, I stayed at my alma mater, University of Pennsylvania. What was great in those days, I was the third assistant, but I was also the head coach of the JV team. They called it a sub-varsity team. So it was mostly kids that wanted to play. We had a couple guys that we would drop down and play a little bit, but most of them was just kids that wanted to play. They were really smart kids. And then when I went to Lehigh, we did the same thing. I was the second assistant, but I was also the head sub-varsity coach. So you're gaining experience even as a 22 and 23-year-old. It's just you on the bench. You got to plan the practices. You got to call timeout. You have to tell them what to do at the end of the game and talk to them before the game, at halftime, after the game, as you build your confidence and your coaching style. I was very fortunate, in those days that we had those sub-varsity teams.
So I'm curious, maybe a great way to kind of wrap up here is looking back on those 40 years, Fran, like what would you now know that you've learned that you would go back and tell your 23-year-old self?
Well, I think you have to be patient and you have to be willing to learn. I was working camps, so you're X&O'ing with really good coaches that, I worked camp with John Calipari and Rick Pitino over the years. I, as a young coach, got to know Jay Wright really well. These are Hall of Famers. I could just keep going with names like that you meet along the way. Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the Knicks. I mean, we're working Eastern Invitational Camp. I'm an assistant at Lehigh. He's an assistant at Harvard. We're in our 20s. I saw him this summer when I went out to see Keegan at the NBA Summer League. And hey, Tommy, hey, Fran. Like I saw him yesterday. We used to work camp together and talk basketball. And thrilled for him. He's happy for me. So you have to be patient. You can't rush it. You've got to learn. You got to make mistakes. But when it's all said and done, it's about one thing. It's about the players that you coach and helping them grow. And, as a college coach, because I never coached in the pros, you have to remain committed to them as people and as students. I'm very proud of the fact that all the guys I've coached have graduated, except for, I think, 2, and that's because they left early to go to the pros.
Yeah.
And, even with Marvel a couple of years ago, Devon Marvel, one of my favorite players I've ever coached, he left at the end of his senior year, so basically April 1st, or maybe it was the last week of March, he just took off and went with his agent, and then we're in California. They were grinding. And, of course, he went in the second round and played, I think, 3 years for the Orlando Magic. But he was playing in Italy, and he blew his knee out. And I called him. I said, hey, you've got about 4 or 5 courses you need to finish up. I said, for the next 9 months, you can't play. And he said, Coach, you're right. He said, I had a conversation with my mom about it. I said, well, you're going to hear from your mom and me, and come on back here. And he came back, and he finished up. And I remember he came in my office, he and his mom, and they were so excited and so proud that he accomplished that. He didn't have to.
Yeah.
He could have just stayed in the NBA. He's going to keep playing for a long time for good money. But it was important to him that he graduate from Iowa. It was important to me. It was important to his family. I think it has to be important to all of us that coach here.
I'm so glad you found your way to Iowa, Fran, and it's been a total blessing to be able to be on the staff with you and to have your family be in town. And really,
I feel the same way about you, and enjoy seeing you all the time. And you do a great job with the podcast, and
thank you.
I enjoyed being on it. And
thank you. You're a busy man, so to give us some time to kind of get a new insight was really, really fun.
It was, and anytime you need me, I'm ready to go.
Okay, well, we might call on you again.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate this, and always the best to you and your family, and looking forward to another very exciting year of Iowa men's basketball.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll get them ready.
I love it. All right. As always, go Hawks.
This has been HERkys Voice. The mission of the HERkys program is to help our Hawkeye community learn, support, and engage with Iowa women's athletics. To learn more about the HERkys initiative, visit herkys.hawkeyesports.com. Hawkeye fans, remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Once you become a Fight for Iowa podcast subscriber, you'll automatically receive the latest episodes of the Fight for Iowa podcast, the HERkys Voice podcast, Hawk Talk replays, exclusive game day content, and more. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Hawkeye Sports Network.